r/Nosleep. Posted by u/Colin13. If you find a show called Chubby's Show on an unused station late at night, do not watch it. I didn't sleep much as a kid. Some nights I was watching TV. Others I was kept awake by creaks and groans. Usually I'd be to bed by 11, sometimes 12. For my young age, the latest I'd ever reached was 1. I don't remember most of it, just a near black room and blue light from the television. So I was up one night. I was 7. Sick with strep throat, I always seemed to catch it. About an hour or two before, I'd vomited everything up and found myself ill in my bed. The TV volume was low, the mumblings of late-night kids' shows chattering like ghosts. Mom left the puke pan on the floor beneath my bed, just in case. When I was done throwing up, I'd stared into my reflection. Pale, glassy, and shaded in blue. I wasn't disappointed to miss school. Overjoyed, if anything. Every day I went in and was almost silent. I'd talk here and there. I'd do my work as lazy as possible. I'd come home and draw while Clone Wars was playing, and then I'd try to forget everything I'd been taught. On conference night, my teacher pointed out a few failed assignments for math. I told my parents I was hypothesizing, like we learned in science. The burn of vomit still hung in my throat. Eyes were dry, arms and legs heavy, the blankets no longer warm enough. Something in the basement was working, a machine, maybe the furnace. It conjured up images of giant metal teeth, my sick form on a conveyor belt, rolling into them as they smashed together. Red eyes like fire alarms flashed inside the head of the thing, and it gnashed its fangs again. The black tore me out of my vision. The show had ended, the next one waiting to come on. First, commercials. The room lit up again. I watched the ceiling fan do nothing for a while and considered what I'd do tomorrow. I had a few ideas for comics, a couple thoughts on characters. I wondered what it was like to write. No pictures, just the words. I blinked, and the fan hadn't moved an inch. I shivered. The commercials were still going. I picked up the remote, squinting at the TV. Too many churning ideas, twisting around my head like stars, and I only had so much money to waste in the toy store. I figured I'd flip channels, maybe bore myself into sleep. Up came the menu. I checked to the right to see if any channels would be showing something good in the near future. Nothing. King of the Hill was going. Dad said not to watch that. Infomercials, talk shows, and reruns on different channels. The kids' shows were all running out. I went as far left as I could to check if anything good was playing in the moment. Nothing. I shut my eyes, relaxed, and let the remote land at my side. It was either up all night or try and sleep, only to be up all night. I shut my eyes tighter, fingers curling at my sides. In my head the reimagined Star Wars characters toted guns and fired lasers, calling for one another over the flames and the smoke. A clone trooper I'd named Jigsaw stood against a Sith Lord in all black armor, face covered. They threw their hand aside and drew a red lightsaber. I was still busy thinking of a name for him. I picked the remote up again. Opened my eyes. I held the down button and watched the channels fly upward, disappearing into the infinite abyss. I squinted and let my tongue loll, the stations all scrolling faster. I was deep in the TV's ocean. Shows titled with numbers and dashes, as if they might be alien broadcasts. I imagined Jigsaw again, him surrounded by other clones, reading a scanner, picking up an enemy transmission. Words. I had accidentally gone a few channels down, so I scrolled back up. Sitting in between the empty stations was a show. Chubby's Show, it said. Not one I'd ever heard of. Head cocked, I stared at the blue rectangle on the menu. Something about it fixated me, recurrent thoughts circled my mind again. The playground. The classroom. School bells ringing. The cafeteria. The blankets couldn't keep me warm anymore. The memories shone like gems beneath sand. The ocean was dark, but they sparkled anyways. I glanced up, once, higher into the abyss. There were sharks circling over my head. I'd seen this show before, somewhere. But I had no memory of what it was about. Or why it made me remember other things. I blinked, once or twice. Then I read the show's description. Meet Chubby, Fatso, Bam Bam and Boomer. The greatest teachers for the greatest generation. I blinked again, rereading the words. My mind ran circles around itself, whispers of a time not too distant spinning around my head. The playground, it was in the fog, the kids were laughing in the classroom, then the school bells rang, you froze in the cafeteria, it towered over even the principal, tall black, and that was when it stopped. My heart pounded my sternum, gut seizing up with twisting pain. My bladder needed to loose itself. I clicked select to watch the show. KZZZZZZT. Pew. The TV went dark. I gasped, jolting forward. I put my hands behind me and craned my neck out. The power had gone out, I figured. Or something weird had happened with the wires. Like spiders, the thoughts crawled up my back. Bit my flesh and left it burning. The back of my neck was hot and prickly, throat dry with puke. The air still smelled sickly sweet like illness. The humidifier hummed in the corner. It was a virus. Dad had told me about them. How I should be careful about what I click on the internet so that I don't infect the computer with one. I pressed the remote to try to turn the TV on and it didn't work. I was seconds away from shouting for Mom or Dad when I pressed the on button 3 more times and it turned on by itself. The circus music started. The bedroom was glowing blue again. Drums beat and whistles chimed, a title appearing in big yellow and red letters. Chubby's Show, it read. I felt nailed to the bed. It began to introduce the cast. Fatso, the screen displayed. A ragged cat, orange fur missing in places and dirty marks all over the costume. He swung around a giant hammer, grin stitched onto his costumed face. There were kids running from him in every direction. Fatso. The TV narrated. I crawled backwards. All the kids were screaming. One of them off-screen was crying. My head banged against the wall. Bam bam. Cheered the TV. A pig appeared on screen. Mud spots covered his face, tears in his costume's fabric. He was in a parking lot, chasing down a group of kids. They checked over their shoulders and sprinted. One of them screamed, barely audible. Jason. Jason. They looked ahead of them, as if checking off screen. Jason. It was Boomer's time to shine. The elephant held the trigger on a power drill, raising it over his head inside a wooden room. A kid strapped to a table pounded their fists on the sides and screamed at the ceiling, thrashing. Jason. Jason. No, not Jason. Grayson. Me. Chubby made his appearance. He brandished another giant hammer, posing with pride. I trembled and my voice shook and I screamed into the night. Mom. Dad. The TV was louder now. Chubby. It exclaimed. I shook beneath the blankets. Mom. Chubby was on their heels, after the mob of kids. They were all running towards the screen like they might escape the dog. Dad. They reached the screen. They pounded from the other side. The old box TV shook in its place and rattled with thuds. Grayson. Grayson. All the kids were screaming. Turn off the TV. Turn off the TV. It was like waking up again. I sat forward and leaned in to listen. Grayson. Turn off the TV. Grayson? Can you hear us? You have to turn the TV off. I blinked a few times. Chubby was closing the gap, nearly to the kids. Grayson. Grayson. My lip quivered. Grayson. Grayson. Chubby was only feet away. Grayson, 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 Grayson. I pointed the remote and clicked. The TV paused. Seconds from death, the kids were frozen with their eyes wide open, hands stuck to the screen, fists pounding against the glass. Chubby stood no more than 2 feet behind, hammer raised, inches from swinging. If he'd brought it down over their heads it would have smashed like a pumpkin, spilling guts and spraying bits of skull. My breath was still catching up. A heart raced inside my chest. The remote was sweaty and warm between my fingertips. The bedroom was the coldest it had been since the night started. Mom. I hollered. Dad. I threw the blanket off me and sprung my feet over the edge. They carried me across carpet still wet and puke-scented and left me at the edge of their door. I banged on it stupidly, tearing it open and switching on the lights. Mom. I tried. Dad? There they were, motionless. The blanket was no longer on them. Their eyes were wide open, glued to the ceiling. Arms splayed out to the sides, legs straight, laying on opposite sides of the bed. They looked almost dead. Mom. Dad? I dashed towards them. I grabbed Mom by the side and tried to shake her awake, screaming into her ear. Mom. 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 Her body was limp to every touch. She wasn't cold, like she was dead. She hardly breathed yet her chest caved in every now and then. I jumped over her and dove for my dad. Dad? He wasn't any better. I pulled his hair, he hated when I did that. I yanked his ears and slapped him on the cheek and shook him by the shoulders while I knelt on his chest and all I felt was his stomach diving down, diving up, diving down. Diving up. They were asleep. I froze on my knees, staring into the cold eyes of a man half alive. Breathing, heart beating, pulse flowing. But no thoughts. The tears bit at my eyes like hissing cats. I shooed them away and fell into Dad's chest. "Dad," I whimpered, "Dad?" And the noise came back. Vague, yet I heard it. I was still lost in Dad's chest, but my eyes were open. Like the devil's whispers. "Grayson. Grayson." Their voices were echoing from the bedroom again. "Grayson." I lifted my head up, rubbing my eyes with a forearm. This wasn't over yet. I jumped off the bed and ran. I tore into the bedroom and stopped in front of the TV. The children were back on the screen. They were pounding the glass. The big metal box was rattling on its stand, shaking so hard it almost fell off. "Grayson. Grayson." Their eyes were lit up like street lamps. They pounded their hands harder against the window. "Grayson. Can you hear us? Are you there?" I trembled. "Grayson." "Hello?" I shouted. "Grayson. Lock all your doors." My chest ached. "Lock all your doors, Grayson." There. The TV went dark again. White lines of static bloomed, zipping up and down, humming. My hand was stuck over my heart, feeling its beat. It seemed to speak in Morse code. "You heard them, Grayson. Go lock your doors, Grayson. They're there." The TV turned back on. Boomer was sitting in a chair. The room was red, made of the same materials you might find on a playground. The sofa appeared like a giant lion. Boomer's couch was just big and yellow, like a slide. He was reading a book the size of a newspaper, a bright red hardcover. "What the Kids Need to Learn," the front cover read. Boomer was silent. So was the room. The TV produced nothing but a low drone, the occasional hum or toot of Boomer mumbling to himself. The camera recording had a mishap. The screen was out of focus for a moment. Then there were footsteps. Fatso the cat rushed in. It jumped up and down and danced around Boomer's chair in glee. "Boomer, Boomer, 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 guess what?" "What, Fatso? What is it?" "I'm trying to read." Fatso started stomping his feet, as if he was doing the potty dance. He tapped his toes quicker and quicker and quicker like a football player, turned towards me. "Boomer, Boomer, Boomer, look." Fatso pointed off the screen, staring directly at me. Boomer's gaze turned my way. My heart fell dead inside me. "We got one," said Fatso. Boomer and Fatso started chuckling all giddy. I screamed and covered myself with the blanket. I started shaking my legs and my head and my mouth got dry as my eyes spilled tears. I peeked over the edge of the blanket thinking they were crawling out of the television, but they hadn't. Boomer and Fatso were running. They were racing through their house, around all the childish things like slides and monkey bars. They dashed up a set of spiral stairs and stopped at the end of a long hallway, pounding on the door. Dud 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 dud. Bam Bam answered the door, the pig oinking into the faces of Fatso and Boomer. "Bam Bam! Bam Bam!" cried Boomer. They turned and pointed at me again. I froze with my eyes hanging above the blanket. "We got one," they said in unison. With a break in all the noise, the three animals froze in the hallway. I thought the show had stopped. But the TV still hummed, just barely, even though the animals were unblinking. They stared a while longer, grinning. Then a door creaked open. Chubby the dog stepped out, blood smeared on his costume, dirt and grime clouding up his white and black fur. He stared with huge costumed eyes, cold and black. The show seemed to stop again. Then it came back on. The four of the animals were running. They were out of the house now, jetting off into a parking lot. Waiting at the edge for them, parked at an angle, was a shiny red car, round and stubby, small enough you could fit another in the same stall. It was like blinking back to life. My heart was screaming now. Echoes in my bloodstream rushing to my brain. Everything was suddenly cold and achy and I thought my head might explode. I remembered what the kids were saying. "Grayson," they cried, "Grayson, go lock your doors, they're there." Coming. In a tide of chills I rushed out of the room. I always kept my window locked. I ran into my parents' bedroom. The windows were clear. I raced back out into my playroom, almost stepping on the toys. I locked that window. I checked every window in the kitchen twice and cleared the sliding back door. I got the front door and barreled into the basement, locking the glass door downstairs. I paused, breathing. The swings in the backyard were moving in the wind. The knife. I remembered Dad's kitchen cleaver. He always buried it deepest in the drawer so nobody would get hurt with it. Well, someone was gonna have to get hurt now. I turned, staring into the blackened basement. I swallowed and chewed on my lip. Then I gasped it for the stairs. I went up them, rounded the corner, and rushed into the kitchen. The drawer was across from me, around the island. I zipped past it, tore it open, and started rummaging. Long blades. Short blades. All of them big enough to kill. None as deadly as the thing that shined beneath. It was huge, silvery, and perfect for chopping a hand off. Take off someone's head if you knew how to use it right. I was mesmerized. Something occurred to me. People were going to get hurt tonight. Bad things were going to happen to someone. There would be blood spilt. I suddenly felt very dangerous, picking up the cleaver and twisting it in my hand. It was almost elegant. I raced back towards my bedroom. The house was dark and still. Every footstep and breath echoed. Other than panels of moonlight on the walls, I couldn't see a thing. I rushed inside my bedroom, panting, and slammed the door behind me. With a quick hand I turned and locked the knob, glancing around in every direction for the TV remote. It was laying on the floor in front of the bed, inches from the puke pan. I grabbed for it and aimed it at the TV. I yanked the shades shut and turned the volume down. The camera's quality had dropped, everything was glitchy and distorted. In darker frames a car moved under street lamps, skipping its blinker and flying through all the stops. There were green, rectangular signs indicating the streets. I couldn't read their names. Chubby and friends were swinging their arms in glee, Fatso at the wheel. They started singing and clapping. The street lights started passing quicker and they nearly hit a mailbox. While their tires screeched and their engines squealed, I took a moment to head for the window, pulling the curtain aside and checking out it. Down left, nobody. Down right, not a soul. The street was empty, all but the lights. I could tell where the car was. There were 2 lanes, a right turn on each side. The glow of the street lights was distant now, but present. They were on Newman Road. No more than a left turn and 100 meters from my house. I made sure the shades were closed all the way. I ran everything through my head again, every lock was shut. The cleaver was in my hand, the remote on the bed. Triple checking. Now, I reviewed the house once more. Bedroom shades. Windows and doors are all locked. I have the cleaver and the remote. They'll be here soon. Soon. Seconds later, I watched the car on the screen turn and slow to a halt. Outside, tires squealed. The animals danced and sang no longer. I couldn't hear them outside. I picked the remote up, muting the TV entirely. My breath whisked in and out, one more time. The camera hovered above the car a while longer. The animals were going around back to the trunk, hoisting it open. From the angle, I couldn't see what they were doing. Then they began to pull things out. For Fatso, the giant hammer would do. He held it over his shoulder and stood like a soldier. Bam Bam picked a Tommy gun out, loading up a magazine. He racked the gun and checked its sights. Boomer ripped a knife from the trunk, holding the blade up to the moon. He let it dance through the air, light bouncing off its sides. For Chubby, the axe. He held it tight and stood deathly still. When everyone was ready, Bam Bam slammed the trunk. I heard it from outside, staring into the curtains. Then the footsteps began, just little scrapes on the concrete. Click click click. They started for the front door. The camera didn't follow them at first. They went off screen and disappeared. Then it moved to the front door, from the perspective of the peephole. I froze, now. Sat on the edge of the bed and paled. I turned to look at the floor, at the spot where the vomit had been cleaned off of. All I found was the puke pan. And staring into it, ghostly white and totally silent, was a boy my age who thought he'd known everything. No, he didn't. I swallowed at my reflection. The front doorbell rang.